It's a little dreary morning, but we're gonna make it a great sunshiny morning, right? So I am so grateful to be here from Omaha. I had the privilege of meeting Pastor Davis at the last regional convention down in Kansas, and he invited me to come preach here in October when I came up for school. And when he knew he was going to be on sabbatical, he invited me back up, and it was perfect timing because now I get to go to the state fair and eat horrible food while I am here for the next day or so. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and deliver this message to them. We get the opportunity to share God's love each day. Through us, another person can see love, feel love, or hear love. When I think of salvation, I think of a place filled with love. When I first saw this picture, it was a message of so many people sharing what love means to them, to be loved, that love is love. But I recognize that how we see love is often through the people we encounter each day, and we hope to model it after Jesus himself. He said, through him all are saved, through his vulnerability, his strength, and ultimate sacrifice, we are saved. I see my life as a Christian to be like Christ. Now, I can't always relate to the Jesus imagery and stories that are shown to be uplifted, but I can think about the Jesus that loved his friends, that cared for the needy, stuck with his conventions, and turned over a table. That's my Jesus. The scripture speaks of those who turn from evil and take pleasure in the 10 Commandments. Now I have to acknowledge that I don't think that person sounds much like me. Yet, when I hear about the legacy of those who followed, my ears begin to perk up. My ancestors, my grandparents, and my parents led their life not focused on themselves, but those who were to come after them. They strived for me to be blessed. Through them, I have been blessed to be free from bondage, to get an education, and to be able to pursue my own dreams. I am their child, a powerful force. My birth mom would tell you that I'm a love child. I was born out of love, a child, no matter the color or circumstance, which brought them into this world, can illuminate love. A child shows us love in their vulnerability. A child reaches for others without a second thought. A child lets the word love roll off their lips with the same ease as cookie. A child teaches us to love as they strut through the grocery store in their rain boots, as they wear their little cat ear headband or superhero costume. Through a child, we're reminded the joy that comes from wearing what makes us comfortable, eating food the way that we like it, and adamantly challenging those who try and fit us in a box. We cannot be in a box, be it a gender box or otherwise. Ultimately, we're challenged to be true to ourselves and others, as our love for justice will endure for all time. This love for justice isn't a passive love. It's loud and bold. When we truly love justice, it's not merely relayed in the words we choose. 1,000 children came together to work towards justice as part of the Children's Crusade in May of 1963. They showed that they could be a powerful voice. They embodied the needs and desires of the individuals around them. The adults had been participating in nonviolent protests for quite some time, yet the adults had jobs to do. And though the children should have been in school, they took to the streets. They were vulnerable. Some, as young as 7, were jailed. You don't have to have power to be a force. They asked to be loved as they are and respected as equals. The next day, another 1,000 kids joined in. They were met with hoses and then ended up with their friends in jail cells. Perhaps we forget that going to jail is something that has happened since Jesus' time, to fight for what is right, or at the very least, highlight what is wrong with our society. Through their bold action and vulnerability, talks began and an agreement was reached. As the scripture states, our children will be a powerful voice, and those who do what's right will be blessed. Our blessings too often come after a loss or heartache. I remember being told the greatest setbacks lead to the biggest blessings. We live in a world where much is beyond our control, and so we are challenged to hold on to the words, "When life is dark, a light will shine." It can be hard to focus on light when in the midst of a war-torn streets of Syria, but one voice can rise above the rubble, asking to be heard. In 2009, Bana was just 7 years old when she began telling her story via Twitter, and with assistance from her mom, who was an English teacher before the war. She was a conduit, a pure reflection of loss, destruction, and hunger that are part of the daily life during war. She became a powerful force, calling out world leaders and being vulnerable with every tweet, once saying, "My name is Bana. I'm 7 years old. I'm talking to the world now live from East Aleppo. This is my last moment to either live or die." She shared, along with her mother, father, and siblings. Through her, just a few months after that Twitter account began, she was evacuated with another 350 souls to Turkey. In 2017, her book, Dear World, A Syrian Girl's Story of War and the Plea for Peace, was published. She speaks of the horrors, but keeps looking towards justice. The fight for justice is seen in the vulnerability of a child and the strength of a teen. Teens are a strong-willed bunch. I can't speak for y'all, but I remember myself as a teen, and I am grateful that my son is not the teen that I was. Teens embody raw emotion. I'm drawn to uplift the words of some of the youth who speak out for their generation, having lost friends and family to gun violence. Emma challenges us saying, it's time for victims to be the change we need to see. Naomi points out she represents the African American women who are simple statistics instead of being vibrant, beautiful girls full of potential. David shares, I'm somebody that had to witness this and live through this, and I continue to have to do that. And lastly, the words of Edna still sit with me. I learned how to duck from bullets before I learned how to read. They choose to be vulnerable. Edna honoring her brother's memory, and Emma openly crying during the March for Our Lives. They remain strong because their love was for justice. These youth share freely without regard. They cannot be rattled by internet trolls, others' ignorance, or basic disregard for their pain. They are just. And like many teens, working to make decisions with sound judgment, as are we as adults. Too often when we speak of vulnerability, we don't include men. We especially overlook Black men, yet they too can be vulnerable. I acknowledge I spend too much time scrolling through Facebook. Oftentimes I come across those inspirational videos, and I saw Terry Crews sharing about the violence he experienced in his childhood home. Now, if you don't know who Terry Crews is, you're missing out. He's a big, strong, dark-skinned man. You might have seen him on Brooklyn 911 or Everybody Hates Chris. He acknowledged witnessing his mother being emotionally and physically abused. That led him to fight for justice. That led him to donate his time and his money towards others who made the brave choice to leave an abusive situation. As he shared his mother's story, he talked about wishing as a child that he was bigger and he was stronger so he could keep his mother safe. In that moment, he embodied pure vulnerability and true strength. Now, as y'all learned, I work at Planned Parenthood, and I have learned so much during my time there about what it means to fight for reproductive justice. And oftentimes, as an advocate, we are asked to share our stories with those who come after us who are sharing in our pain. I have had the privilege to not only learn about the way that Black women fight for reproductive justice, but how Asian and Pacific Islander women fight as well. One of my coworkers shared with me a beautiful book that was called Dear Sister. The purpose of this book was to acknowledge that they too were a survivor of sexual violence and to share their story of strength, to let their sisters know that they could overcome. They shared so freely, as we are challenged in the scripture to do. They were vulnerable and strong in ways that I can only imagine, and they passed that on to others. Through their strength, through their stories, another person was told that they too can be a survivor and not a victim. They were confident. Now, unfortunately, we live in a world that too often people use their power for hate. They use their power in ways that leave older people feeling weak. But I believe that through vulnerability, we can be strong. Through our time to be like a small child and reach for another, to speak out in love, to be our authentic selves. In those moments, we are choosing to be vulnerable. We are remembering those who came before us and recognizing that we are their greatest dreams. We remember that strength and to be strong is not just shown in our muscles, but it's shown in our quiet resistance. It's shown with our mind and our bodies and our souls as we pull it all on the line as we work towards justice. And ultimately, we are challenged to sacrifice. Through one person's sacrifice, another person can be saved. Through one person's sacrifice, another person can see the love of God in a way they never imagined. Being a mom is one of the greatest privileges I've ever been afforded. And I remember when I first had my son, the number one thing I sacrificed was sleep. But I sacrificed my time, I sacrificed my money, and not just for him, but all the children who I encounter. I try and share with them the God and the Jesus that I know, the one that loves everyone, the Jesus that was a counterculture revolutionary, who didn't believe that we should just do what the government or the leaders or the systems tell us is right, but we should reach for that other person who is the outcast, that we should be vulnerable, and that we should sacrifice, sometimes ultimately ourselves. And in doing so, through us, another may find love. Thank you.